Welcome to Hope Blooms, a podcast from the Early Pregnancy Loss Association.
At EPLA, we seek to support women and families suffering early pregnancy loss by providing resources, education, and community. It is our vision that no one suffers miscarriage alone.
Welcome back to Hope Blooms. I'm Maria Servold, EPLA's president.
And I'm Emily Carrington, EPLA's executive director.
Today we're going to talk about something that's been one of our visions and goals for our organization from the very beginning. In fact, it was sort of the initial idea that Emily had when thinking about this organization and starting this organization. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that story?
Yeah, so this is actually something we don't do yet. And it was the first idea that, like you said, sort of sparked the organization. And this is medical bill relief. So it was the fall of 2014, late fall, probably like October, November. And we had lost a baby in April, May, and then again in September. And our loss in April and May, it was like the last week of April, first week of May, was very expensive. I had $500 due Friday morning before I could have my DNC.
Oh, boy.
I wrote a $500 check when I showed up to the surgery center. And then bills just kept coming. There were, of course, doctor's bills and anesthesiologist bills. And so they just sort of lab bills. Mm-hmm. It was pretty expensive. I'm not sure exactly what the total number was. Probably, somewhere between $1,000 and $1,500. But it was more substantial. We had decent insurance, but also a lot came out of pocket. So that was May. We kind of put that one behind us. We got through it. And then in September, we lost another pregnancy, almost exact same timing as our previous pregnancy. And that one, I had a natural miscarriage at home. Mm-hmm. So it was not there was no surgery. Mm-hmm. It was at home. It was natural. And so I remember, the first time, I guess I didn't think much of it other than just like whatever things need to happen. And I don't know. And at the end, like, whoa, wow, that was kind of expensive. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So the second time we had a natural miscarriage at home. I've told the story before. We went to the doctor for a routine checkup, couldn't hear a heartbeat, went back for an ultrasound, couldn't find a heartbeat, waited a week or something like that to see if we were wrong about growth, couldn't find a heartbeat again, then made the decision / didn't make the decision, which is somehow how I make decisions.
Let it happen.
I just sort of refused to make the decision to have surgery as long as I was safe. Mm-hmm. And which then implicitly was the decision to have a natural miscarriage. So we did that, and that is what ended up happening. And that was a very different grief process. Definitely a lot more time to sit with my grief. Life wasn't moving as fast. Things weren't quite a blur. And couple months later, I don't know, 4 to 6 to 8 weeks later, right? Mm-hmm. I get this bill, and I swear it was for like $93. I don't know why it's that clear in my head. And I got it that morning, and I remember thinking like, man, I felt decent today. Mm-hmm. And this is stupid.
Ruining your day.
This is just a stupid reminder. Right. And I mean, it's not that I don't think, obviously, I'm incurring services, and there's very few hospital services, except for maybe the birth of a child, that anyone was like, I love paying for my broken arm or my heart attack, or all of them are mildly traumatic, right? Like, you don't go to the hospital excited
with your credit card.
Right. Like, I can't wait to spend money here.
Yeah.
So, but it was just like, man, what a reminder. This sucks. So this is the trauma I know, right? And I went to lunch with my husband that day, and I remember a coffee cup diner. I remember distinctly, and said, if we had all the money in the world, I would just call the hospital and start paying these bills. And he sort of just stared at me because we don't have all the money in the world.
Like a good husband, unsure what to say. Yeah.
And at that point, this was just really like a genuine, like individual, I wish this is something I could help do. So then that winter was a rough winter for me. I had not taken a job when we moved. We moved in May, sort of on top of our first loss. The original plan was for me to stay home with this baby. And then we quickly got pregnant with another baby. So that seemed good. So I just had not looked for work and had a really rough winter of just identity. Like, who am I? Why? Like, what is happening? And was sort of trying to like get some things off the ground within my field. Like, okay, well, I have background in museum studies and I really like grant writing and nonprofits. And maybe I want to do sort of some consulting work in that area. And then it sort of like all came together all of a sudden where it was like, wait, I don't have all the money in the world, but I am also probably not the only person with this problem. And maybe there is something here that if we come together, there is a way we can do this. So that was winter of 14, 15. It's been a very, very slow process, but we started then just to talk, right? And so I talked to my mom about it, and she had some good ideas on how to get started and get off the ground. So that's when we started doing these. We did, I think, 2, if not 3, like community input meetings. And I know you were there for at least one of them.
Yeah.
And like, hey, what are the needs? What are the needs out there? And can we pay bills for women?
That was always one of the first things we talked about.
Yeah.
I mean, that and resources, information and physical resources. Those were sort of like the big 3.
Right. And from those meetings, it became clear too that not only bill pay is a problem, but that, all the things we do, educational resources, physical resources, and those were sort of the proverbial low-hanging fruit, right? Yep. It's a lot easier to just start. So we decided, right, like, let's start where we can start. Let's get educational folders. And then we moved on to the miscarriage care kits, which are great. But we're still stuck here with with trying to make bill pay happen. And I want to say, let's talk a little bit here about the challenges. Part of my vision has always been for it to be super easy for the mom.
Right.
And I think this is some of where we get stuck. Obviously, we want to be able to provide resources for the mom and the people who need them. But we also want it to be super easy. My original vision was that it would just the bills would just disappear. And then
we could swoop in somehow and pay them without them having to see it.
So not an application process, not one more thing to do,
Because at that moment in time, everything feels hard. Even the little normal things feel hard.
Right.
And then, it's like paying bills in general might be hard. And then if it's a bill that it's like you're sending your money away to pay for this, the memory of a terrible night or something.
Right. So, my original dream was just to swoop in, the bill would go away. And instead of a bill, you'd get a lovely card that says something like, your bill has been paid for by the Early Pregnancy Loss Association. That has proved difficult to impossible.
Yes.
For so many reasons. So I guess, Maria, take it from there.
Okay.
Where we are and why this has been so hard.
Right. Well, and it's interesting because it was even hard at first to be like, who do we talk to first, right? Like, where do we go first? And so we have been working with our local hospital, which has been great, but even figuring out which person at the hospital do you talk to? Is it this department or that department? And then we quickly realized it can't be the kind of thing where, because of HIPAA laws, health privacy laws, it's complicated.
Like, yeah, I mean, we are not here to explain to you the problems of medical billing in America.
Right. But we can't know about those people without the people knowing that we know, you know what I mean?
Right.
Because
there's so many challenges here.
Yeah.
And so much red tape, and medical billing is utterly confusing. HIPAA laws, insurance coverage, and these are things that I do not understand.
Right.
I am not insurance. I'm not an actuary scientist. I'm not an accountant. Yeah. I'm not a lawyer. We're not a lot of things.
Yeah. We're people with an idea. But we have had help from some people who do know those things. And I would say we're close. We've got a draft agreement. It needs a couple more approvals, but we're fingers crossed within this calendar year, going to make it happen. And it would involve then people who have suffered a loss having to technically apply in a way. And that's sort of how we get around the laws.
At least request.
Around the laws is not the right word. The way we work within the laws.
Yes. No, that's exactly what has taken us so long, is that we want this to work within hospital policies, within obviously local and U.S. law and tax law and privacy law. And, in some ways, this would be easy, and we make it there, an application process where we sort of have both things at once. But we really just want to make this easy for women and families.
Yeah.
We also have challenges. Taking an application isn't as easy as it sounds either, because then suddenly we have data, so this has been, not to get into the depths of all the all the policy and that
details. Yeah.
See, so that has been slowing us down. And also there was some time where we needed to literally have the money, and so we have been blessed with continued growth and resources. So this is something that feels like a reach, but a good reach, one that we've always tried to do.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting, I think, is sometimes if we feel frustrated that we haven't accomplished it yet, it's sort of this great driving force to keep us going. I mean, everything we're doing keeps us going every time we send a kit and know we help somebody, but it's this still, we still have this goal that we're trying to attain, right? This fundamental goal. Yeah.
And I think, people, it's something that comes up and bubbles up as there's been more miscarriage awareness. I think there's been more awareness of the expense of miscarriage, right? So I think one of the disservices that the miscarriage myth, that this is just like a heavy period, is that then there wouldn't be any medical.
Right.
You go buy a $10 pack of pads and move on, which we also think is a resource barrier, and we provide pads in our resources because we understand that that's still a resource barrier for some people. But yeah. I mean, I've had people say, like, "What do you mean medical expenses?" People who should know, isn't it just something that happens?
Right. Well, and in my case, I had 2 separate ER visits for the one loss, which included the doctor and I think an ultrasound. And then, the second time, more ER visit and then a DNC. So, by the time we were done, it was thousands of dollars.
Right. And, I've talked to many women who've had, ambulance rides. Ambulatory services are not cheap. Ultrasounds themselves are not cheap. Every visit, and you look at places that don't have access to great OB care or any OB care. So they end up in the ER. And miscarriages frequently happen, right? In the first 8 weeks, there's a lot of time. Both mine were around 11 weeks. So I had established OB care, which kept me both times kept me out of the ER. Oh. So that's cheaper. But if it's in the first 8 weeks, you may not have established care yet. Some OBs don't establish care till 12 weeks. So now you're in the ER.
Yeah, no matter what. And then, that's just more bills, which, I mean, I'm glad we have the emergency room and that I had somewhere to go and stuff. But as we talked about in a previous episode, the care I got there that one time wasn't great. So that was part of it too, was I sort of felt like what happened in the ER the first time was not comforting and great. I didn't leave feeling good. And not only because of the loss. And then so that on top of that, to then get a bill for that sort of felt like kicking me while I was down.
Right. And I think depending on, insurance and coverage and, I've heard of, I said my first experience was probably $1,500. I've heard of experiences, in the $9,000 to $10,000 range. So this is financially substantial,
yes.
and I think overlooked, right? Like, we all know that cancer is expensive, right? We all know that. Someone has cancer, you can be cancer broke for a long time. There are now, there's GoFundMe's.
Right.
That is something I think like, that alarm goes off in people's head. Like, this could be, $1 million in medical bills.
Right. You wouldn't necessarily be surprised by a big bill.
Right. And miscarriage, I don't think that goes off in people's head right now, that this is expensive. It's not $1 million, but $1,000 to $10,000 is a lot of money.
Right. And for a process that's supposedly, mostly natural. Right. Like, it's a thing that the body does. And yet,
Yes, but I do not spend $1,000 every month.
Right. Right. Exactly.
To take care of my body.
Right.
Right. So, this is substantial. And unfortunately, women often suffer repeat miscarriages. And even then, if you want to move into testing or you want to move into other lab work.
Right.
So we just think it's really important to, one, raise awareness that miscarriage is expensive. This is a financial burden. And it is, I think, where it's separated from other medical expenses. I want to be careful with how I say this because I guess it depends. I don't think that miscarriage should be like a free service.
Right.
Like I said, if the hospital gave you every sad thing for free, they're
right.
Right. But you're dealing with both a physical trauma and the emotional grief of the death of someone else, making it, a really complicated grief.
Yep.
So hopefully the next time we talk about miscarriage medical bill relief, we'll be announcing
we'll have a program.
We have a plan and a program, and that we have started implementing, and we really want to start local. I do think too, there's a need to focus on rural health medical miscarriage bill relief in rural areas. The more I have been reading and researching just the need for maternal health care in rural locations, and the support for that is just really, really necessary. So being moved to start helping our local community in this way, and to provide some relief in some rural underserved medical areas, and help in that way. So hopefully we'll have more movement on that. And you're to our listeners, any support. This is something that we've been stashing funds away for. Any support, any guidance, any ideas.
If anyone out there's an expert in this,
if you have insurance, legal, medical,
yes, let us know.
Gifts, all of that, we're here for it. We're here to listen to your ideas, and we're really close. So we hope this is something you all can get excited for, if there is such a word, but get moved for. So thank you for listening.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Hope Blooms, a podcast from the Early Pregnancy Loss Association.
To learn more about how we and you can support women suffering early pregnancy loss, visit our website at miscarriagecare.com or find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you for listening.